Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the channel. My name is Bonk, and today we finally make the Tenet weapon tier list. I've done the Kuva weapons, I've done the Warframes. It is now time to cover the techno tyrants of the Warframe weapon world. 100% opinion, of course. So, what's going on here? Well, first I'm going to explain each one of the tiers in my tier list, explaining what it means for a gun to be placed there. We have D tier, C tier, B tier, A tier, S tier, and finally a secret tier, because that's how I do things when I make tier lists on this channel. After explaining each tier, I'm gonna go from the bottommost tier up, explaining each weapon within each of those tiers. So for example, we will start with the D tier weapons at the bottom and end with the S tier. Yeah, each weapon will get a very brief explanation of why it is being slotted in its spot. Some weapons will get more just because I have more to say in certain circumstances. And finally, the last thing to mention before we get a move on here is that because I feel like it, I'll throw up a decent build for every one of these weapons as we go through, as a little reference in case you may be having some trouble using a certain weapon to its full potential. And yes, the list has ergo-glassed melee Tenet weapons. So, real quick, let's cover what a weapon being placed in a certain tier means. We can skip D tier and C tier because I personally believe no Tenet weapon is bad enough to not be touched at all or just try out. B tier is just the average weapons. These will be fine in any circumstance if built correctly, but they won't exactly be amazing anyone with their power. A tier weapons are in a similar situation. These weapons are amazing in any scenario you may find yourself in while playing the game, but the difference between the A tier and the B tier weapons is that the A tier ones take a lot less commitment in terms of time and resources compared with the average B guns. And finally, we have S tier. These weapons wreck pretty easily with very little effort in terms of investment. And if you take them into endgame, you will shred anything needed. Of course, there's the secret tier that isn't even slightly secret at this point, but anyway, I'm not going to tell you any more detail about that. All you need to know is it is at the top above S tier. Our first weapon to discuss is going to be in the B tier. Again, the average ones. This weapon is an ergo-glassed melee, the Tenet Agendis. This sword and shield weapon isn't weak by any means. Of course, all Tenet weapons will come with a progenitor bonus and a max level of 40, already boosting their potential over a lot of other options. But the Agendis is one of, if not, probably the weakest option nowadays out of all of the Tenet weapons, in my opinion of course. Most build for heavy attacks with this weapon, allowing for some chunky crits, and it's also capable of throwing a disc of energy similar to the other ergo-glassed melees. If you're looking for just a decent melee that has a little bit of potential, I wouldn't stop you from getting Agendis, but you have to keep in mind that you need time to get a weapon like this, because you do have to farm those railjack missions to get the corrupted hollow keys. So I would say if you don't have that time, I would totally save your corrupted hollow keys for a different option. One later on happens to be one of my favorite melees in the whole game, so we'll get there when we get there. Anyway, let's go on ahead to our next average option in the realm of Parvos. The Tenet Spear X is the Corpus's answer for the Seer. This weapon, if built correctly, could rocket up the ladder that is this tier list. It has massive crit potential and is even used in Eidolons, but you need to invest into this weapon to get it to its true capability. This weapon also has a thing called a Deadeye passive that will increase your reload speed a little bit on headshot. The weapon does boast a lower reload speed, fire rate, ammo count, and disposition, so that little reload buff is kinda helpful. If you asked me if it's worth building this thing and investing what you have, I would 100% tell you to go for it. Although I'm placing it in average, I do think that every single Tenno should give this weapon a shot. You might love it, you might hate it, and it's also of course not an ergo weapon, so you don't have to worry about the hollow keys. You know, just a whole sister, which can be easier depending on how strong you are. Let's go on ahead to our third and our final weapon in the B tier. A two-handed Ninkana, the Tenet Livia, the lightsaber. It's okay. I mean, Tenet weapons are all at least average. The problem I have with the Livia is that it's just not worth when looking at the big picture. Two-handed Ninkanas just have a problematic stance, and other melee types are just objectively better, i.e. normal Ninkanas or glaives. And this is an ergo-glassed melee. So I don't know about you guys, but I kinda hate railjack stuff, and I don't want to go farm all of these keys just to waste it on a melee I know has barely any potential. I know I will slap this thing in the back of the arsenal as soon as it's max level and I've gotten my MRXP. Moving back to a melee I actually enjoy to play. Okay, to be very clear about this lightsaber, it's not terrible. If you want to get it and you like two-handed Ninkanas, it is certainly an option, This is just a case where there's just better options out there. Let's head up the ladder to the A tier weapons. Great for everything, much less investment needed. I recommend you get all of these. Starting in the A tier comes the Tenet Cycron, the Kuva Nucor type beam secondary, but a little worse in my opinion. Still a great option, and I know there's a lot of players out there that swear by this thing over the Kuva Nucor. The Cycron is an elemental machine, and it is very easy to build up. This weapon will shoot one beam that will split off of the enemy you hit, hitting a few more enemies in close proximity. It of course also does not require an ammo count, as it will be regenning. If you're getting yourself one, all you have to do is get a heat progenitor bonus, throw on some normal elemental mods and a couple multi-shot and a little bit of crit, and you will have a great time dissolving foes that you cross. So all in all, go get a Cycron, totally worth it. I recommend heat. Let's go on to our next A tier weapon, one that plenty of people look over when in reality its potential is incredible. The Tenet Detron. Yep, that's right. My tier lists always have that one weapon I have a funky opinion of, and this time I think it might be the Detron. With the right combo of mods and progenitor, this thing is capable of insane amounts of burst DPS. If there are any mag mains listening, this weapon is S tier for your character, and you definitely need to cut out some time to go hunt for the max bonus of magnetic. The only weapon that beats it out in its class for crits per shot is the Piranha. It has great reload speed, and of course the reason for its amazing burst capability is that it shoots out 10 pellets base. It has its downsides when it comes to fire rate and a very low status chance, but I would definitely recommend everybody grab a magnetic Detron at some point, especially the mag mains out there. What is our next A tier weapon? It's the Tenet Diplos, once again paralleling the Kuva weapon, the Stubbas. These dual SMGs are great. They have homing projectiles in the form of a little auto-lock burst shot when aiming, so accuracy does become a little less of an issue if you go that route, even though the burst shot isn't really all that strong. If you're a Ureli player, this one is your weapon, as while moving you'll be granted plus 300% crit chance. Magnetic is once again what I would recommend as the progenitor for these babies, but of course there must be downsides to such a great weapon. Well, these auto-locking projectiles are of course a burst, not just your normal slugs, which does hurt the DPS capability a little bit. And it auto-locks onto the body, so the headshots are very difficult, although possible if you aim toward the heavens. Pretty much, these are a weapon to get if you already have the other A tier options or anything above. I would recommend grabbing them, but don't make it your top priority. New weapon alert, the Tenet Plinks was just added yesterday when I was writing this. I haven't gotten my hands on one myself just yet, but through looking around at other people's builds and opinions, it seems A-worthy. With the right setup, this thing can actually deal some nutty damage. It has regenning ammo, and now the Tenet version has a little explosive sucky shot that deals radiation for a little bit of fun. It has an innate heat damage on its normal fire, and of course that alt fire I mentioned with the radiation damage. You'll probably want to go for a full heat, blam, everything melted build with this thing, so I would say Plinks 100% should be originated in fire, but to be honest, most elements can work if you're having trouble attaining the kills needed in the Grain of Void with a fire progenitor. Anyway, again, I do not have one of these myself yet, I want to make that clear, as it is extremely new still, and I was farming other Tenet weapons in preparation for this list. The next two weapons in the A tier and our final two are both the last Ergoglast melees. The Tenet Grigori, one of my favorite melees in the game, and the Tenet Exec. We'll first cover the Grigori. I love this thing. It is one of my favorite melees for a multitude of reasons. Most importantly, it looks amazing with the right color choices. It has a projectile disc which deals a really good chunk of damage, and it's a scythe, which is awesome. In fact, the fastest attack speed scythe, tied with a few others. You guys will have to tell me if I'm wrong placing this one in this tier, because I'm probably slightly biased. As I said, it was one of my favorites. But if you're looking for any one of the melees from Ergo, and it is your first little taste into the Tenet melees, I say get the Grigori. 100% bonk recommended. Let's move on ahead now to our other melee and the last A tier weapon, the Exec. The Exec is a heavy blade with similar stats to the Graham Prime. I prefer Graham if I was to pick a heavy blade ever, but you know, Graham has slightly higher status chance and damage, but the Exec does boast a higher attack speed and crit chance. It's a meh, not bad, not super great. With the right setup, of course, you just crit stuff, and it is Steel Path capable. Another A tier weapon that's here because I truthfully just believe it can do endgame pretty easily, even if I personally don't really like this weapon or would ever use it. I have to be kind of objective, and this thing's crits can do endgame. I personally will never run this thing, but if you want to, I'm not saying it's bad or anything. S tier time. Okay, S tier, let's go. OP weapons, go burr, and shred enemies, easy games. First up, one of my personal favorite picks for beam, the Tenet flux rifle. The beam weapon that's kind of a beam, kind of a rifle, so it has nutty range, and it's incredibly easy to build. Elements, boom. Low multi-shot, boom. And finally, just get your hands on one simple mod, Flux Overdrive. This mod offers a fluctuating increase in your status chance that can really give this weapon the kick it needs to schmelt. Go for Toxin when you're progeniting this weapon. Everyone should have a maxed out, fully built Tenet Flux rifle, no doubt in my mind. Especially with the single target weapons kind of making their way up to the top of the meta through all these nerfs recently. Even though we're not there yet, you should be prepared with a good single target, and Flux is that weapon. Tenet Envoy and Tenet Tetra, they both make a big boom. I recommend either Radiation or Toxin for both. The Envoy is basically the Tenet Czar, kinda. Not really as strong since Czar is such a powerhouse right now, but still a great weapon. The same goes for the Tetra. These things can both shred an endgame with a big boom explosion super easily, and all you need is a little viral and a little slash. And AoE as of right now is still great, so go get these guys and try them out to really see that potential in Steel Path or Arbitrations or something while you still can. Kaboom will always be fun. And that's the end. Yeah, I mean, you know I'm lying. I've done this like 3 times now. It's secret tier time. Welcome to Plasmor tier, baby. Best Tenet weapon in the whole game. Go bam, shoot big wall, kill death, everything. Something around a corner? Well, oh, too bad. Well, big boom wall bounces. You get him? Bam. Enemy above you? You could look up, but it's Plasmor, baby. Look down, bounce, kill that. Thanks for watching, everyone. I hope you all enjoyed. This list, of course, was a 100% opinionated list, but I believe to the best of my knowledge that I presented the facts. I, of course, know that I don't know all the facts, and that's why I will be asking anyone who found issues with things I said not to hesitate to add to the argument. All I ask is that you do it not like an asshole. Be somewhat respectful to others in the comments, as respectful as a YouTube comment section can get at least. And if you did enjoy, leaving a like would be super appreciated and go a long way in helping my channel get out to others. Same goes for the sub, it would be super appreciated. Anyway, play Zaku 24/7 or your Venari will get feline AIDS, and good night.